بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Because I am recording, if you can mute the voice from your side, it would be clearer. Okay. Can you mute it?
Yes.
Okay. So, first, inshallah, I will explain what I have decided for today, and then, inshallah, we can have question and answer. As you remember, we said there are some theories about foundations of morality which are very important, and the first one is natural law theory, which in brief says that we can draw our moral values from nature, from the book of creation. As we have book of Revelation, we have book of creation, and we discussed it already. The second theory is, instead of focusing on nature in general, invites us to reflect on human nature, because perhaps they have realized that, as I said, in nature you find conflicting patterns. Something that one animal does, maybe another animal doesn't do. Therefore, they said, let's reflect on human nature, because human nature is also created by God, and it's in harmony with His legislation. And whether you understand something from Revelation or from human nature, they should be in harmony with each other. Here, again, we see the name of Aristotle. Although Aristotle is introduced as one of the pioneers of natural law theory, he is also mentioned here. And this confirms that maybe this is a modified version of the first theory. Two major issues are raised here. And those who believe in human nature as the basis and the foundations of morality need to answer these two questions. One, is there such a thing as human nature? And in general, is there such a thing as substance? You know, there are people who don't believe in substance. Some empiricists, they don't believe in substance, because you cannot prove and understand substance through five senses. Whatever we see are some a'raz, some accidents, not substance. Of course, John Locke had the idea that we cannot prove empirically substance, but we have to postulate, we have to take it for granted, because without substance we cannot have accidents. But David Hume said no. If something cannot be proved empirically, we don't believe in it, even by implication. So he denied substance. When it comes to psychology, you find there are people who deny human nature, human soul, human spirit, like behaviorists. They say, we just study behavior. Where do these behaviors originate? from? Maybe from nothing. They don't bother about these issues. Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, didn't believe in human nature. Some people say there is nature, but it's very vague and very open and very flexible. You can understand different things as human nature. And people can use human nature as the basis of Buddhist ethics or as a basis of Christian ethics. So this is one issue that we have to answer. The second issue is, if we believe there is such a thing as human nature, would it be strong enough, clear enough, that would give us basis for one moral theory, or can be more than one? If you remember, I think I had this for you, I don't know, but inshallah we will talk about it later in more details. Relativists, they say there is no single true morality or no single most justified morality. There can be more than one single true or most justified morality. So if we believe in human nature, does it give us enough ground, sufficient ground for non-relativist approach or not? So this is also another issue. Inshallah, when I explain our own theory and my own account of foundations of morality, we will clarify these issues. We believe in human nature being part of our moral theory, but with some additions and some explanations that inshallah it will come later. The third theory is the theory which is relying on human needs. Human beings have different needs. Some needs are very basic. We need air, we need food, we need water, we need shelter. But they are not concerned about this type of needs. It's not that from need for air and food and shelter and clothes and water they draw morality. No. They say we have another type of needs. And these needs should give us some adequate ground for morality. And those are the needs that are psychological or social or cultural, more than food and, these are like everything that the animals also need: food, air, oxygen, shelter, water. No, we are not talking about those. We talk about human needs. We have psychological needs, we have social needs, cultural needs. And these are the needs that our moral theory should take into account and give satisfactory answer about how to meet these needs. But there are no kind of needs which are agreed by everyone. There are different accounts. And even some people say that, like Maslow, they say that when we meet our basic needs, then higher needs emerge. As long as you are concerned about food and water and shelter, you don't think about love, which is a higher need, or belonging. A very beautiful point is that one of the needs of human beings is to belong to a group, a camp, a party, a circle, a community, a family, We need to belong to something, to be disconnected, to be lonely in a psychological sense. Even if you are surrounded by people who are strangers, it would be very harmful for us and very painful for us. So these needs are there, but sometimes there is no agreement on them, or it's not available in every group of people. Some people have said, for example, removing pain. Some people say love for justice. Some people say to be brave in the face of injustice. Some people say pride. Some say love for children. Some say need for joy and happiness. So there are different lists of the needs, and some people say these needs are not all categorized as needs. Some of them are desires. Then we have to discuss what is the difference between desire and need, which of course I have studied this in last chapter of my book, Ethical Relativism. In any case, there is a discussion here about needs being the basis of morality, but we should talk about human needs, and then we have to clarify what do we mean by human needs. But again, another challenge comes, and that's a challenge of relativism, to show how our response to human needs is not relativist, how we cannot have more than one response. This is also something that we have to clarify. Then fourth theory, inshallah I will come back to this, because in my theory, inshallah, my account, we will talk about human needs as well. The fourth account is putting morality on the foundation of agreement and contract. For example, Thomas Hobbes, he had this idea that there is a kind of agreement among people that makes something good or bad. If the agreement changes, values change. Some people believe that this agreement can be implicit, like Gilbert Harman. It's not that you find a certain time and place in which members of a society sat and agreed that, okay, from now on, keeping your promise is good. From now on, slavery is good or slavery is bad. So some say there is no need to be explicit agreement, but implicit agreement. A kind of gradual process that little by little an agreement takes form among members of a society or community. So some people want to say akhlaq is based on agreements, on contracts, tawafuq or qarardad. And here again there are different versions. One of the people that I have discussed in my book on ethical relativism, I have dedicated one chapter to him, is Gilbert Harman. He's an American philosopher, contemporary philosopher, and he was the teacher and supervisor of David Wong. In 1984, David Wong had his thesis on ethical relativism, which is published as a book, and Gilbert Harman is his supervisor. So his theory about ethics has different dimensions, and one of them is that there is a kind of inner judgment that we have about morality, but this can lead to relativism. He was a relativist, and his relativism is a moderate version, and I have tried to say he's not fully relativist. But anyway, he has this idea that there can be different understandings of morality based on the way there is implicit agreement and there is a kind of inner judgment that inside us we make these agreements. There are some issues about this theory because according to this theory, prior to agreement, there is no basis for morality. Now, if a slavery, before we agree on a slavery being bad or good, is neutral, and we grant it to it its moral position, its moral status, then why we should worry about it? And what happens if we don't agree on anything? In other words, this contract, this agreement, is it a matter of recognizing together the moral foundations, or we just from vacuum bring this moral position and attach to it? If you say in reality, in the world of facts, slavery is either good or bad, and we try to discern together and come up with some agreement, okay, then that's fine. Then agreement is not the basis. It's just a way of recognizing. But if you say, no, there is no morality, no difference, no right and wrong, before we agree, okay, then what happens if we don't agree at all? Or we agree on something opposite? Why then there should be, for example, moral reforms in societies? Why they need to change from one position to another position? So this theory is very weak if they want to say contract and agreement grants moral status to the actions. The fifth theory is our theory. This is what I have tried to develop, and I think this can be welcomed by Muslims. It can be welcomed by non-Muslims. Actually, when my book was published, and I put this in the last chapter, then there was a book review by one of the lecturers from SUAS University, and said that Catholics should welcome this book because they have also rational approach to ethics. They are close to us because of influence of people like St. Thomas. So I think this is what people who have rational and foundationalist approach to ethics should appreciate. But maybe there are people who don't agree because they have not looked at things in this way. Maybe some Muslims don't agree because they have their own, I don't know, way of articulating. But I don't think there is any reason why there should be disagreement here. So what I try to do is now to explain our theory of ethics step by step. This is in addition to the discussions that we had before. And this is also a very kind of early stage. We need more and more people to work on this. And I have tried, as you will see, to only use reason and rational approach. Sometimes I quote Quran or Hadith, but just as a kind of additional support. Otherwise, This is something that I presented in Department of Philosophy, and at that time there was no Quranic reference or Hadith reference. Everything was purely philosophical. And I think this is the language that we need also in order to cross the borders between different religions and different groups. Okay, I thought maybe we can start in this way. Where does akhlaq, ethics, start? Or if you want to make it more precise, where do moral reflections, contemplations, considerations start? Because maybe someone says akhlaq is there even if we don't exist. When I say when akhlaq starts, I mean our consideration of akhlaq, our understanding of akhlaq, how we are faced for the first time with akhlaq and ethics. I said, when we grow in our understanding as a child, first of all, the child doesn't have that much understanding. Just through instincts, qara'is, looks for milk or, water, or, is concerned about the temperature and so on and so forth. But when we grow in our understanding and we want to make choices, not choices by instincts. Okay, a baby decides to cry. A baby, I don't know, moves away from something which is hot. No, I'm not talking about this type of things. When we have enough understanding that we want to make choices, moral choices or free choices, what we do is that we consider ourselves as the center of our considerations. No matter whether we are the center of the world or not. For our considerations, we are the center of the world. It's like for those who calculate moon eclipse or sun eclipse, khusuf, kusuf, still they consider the earth as the center of the world, and they make their calculation this way, although we know the earth is not the center of the world. But for calculation, this doesn't make difference, and it's easier. So we are not talking about being center of the world in a metaphysical sense. We are center of the world for our own considerations. And actually, if you are very concerned, you can see that every person lives in a different world. And sometimes my world and your world, even if we live together, are totally different. And this is where problems start. Because from my world to your world, there must be lots of windows and lots of gates to interact and to communicate. But sometimes we don't communicate and just interact. Sometimes we don't understand each other, but we work together, we live together, and this creates lots of problems because everyone has his own world. And sometimes even people, when they listen, they don't listen carefully and they misjudge each other. So the more they speak, the more they fight, because it's not productive way of talking and listening. In any case, every person is the center of his or her own world. And then you make relations with everything around. Individuals, can be relatives, can be familiar faces, strangers, objects. Little by little becomes more abstract. For example, about your health, about your education, about your friendship, about loneliness, about your future. So you make lots of considerations based on the relations, which one side is yourself and the other side are objects or people or concepts. Little by little, this grows. Then, whatever you want to do, you think, based on your understanding of these relations, is this going to be useful for me and making my relations better? Is it going to serve my purpose? Is it going to help me in pursuit of my ideals or not? Very simply, is it beneficial or not? There can be three options. It's beneficial, it's harmful, it's neutral. For everything you do, you make this quickly or you take your time, but you have to make this judgment. If you realize that this is good, this is useful, this is beneficial, this is helpful in pursuing your goals, your aims, your ideals, your objectives, you will do it. If you think it is harmful, you try to avoid it. If it is neutral, you don't have enough reason to do it. So you don't do it practically, because having no good reason is like having a reason for not doing. If you don't have good reason for doing, it's like having a good reason for not doing. But sometimes there is additional things that help. So this by itself is not enough to motivate me to do, but there can be additional consideration, then because of that I do or I decide not to do definitely. In any case, no one would do anything unless that is something that this person in his or her calculations and considerations has found to be productive, to be beneficial, to be useful in this network of relations that are all to serve his or her interests. Everything should serve me, help me. But with a point that inshallah I will add to what most of people say, I have an additional point. So, this is the beginning of our journey. Before we go further, I have 2 points here. One, when we say we do only those things which we find to be useful, this to find is very important. Or we don't do things which we find harmful. To find harmful is very important. Because it's not important, or it's not all important, that something in reality is useful or harmful. Because if there is something in reality useful and harmful, but you don't know it, or you have another judgment, it is not going to affect you. If something is in reality harmful and I think it's useful, I do it. If something in reality is useful and I think it's harmful, I don't do it. So, what you find to be, what based on your understanding is useful or harmful, can be giving you motivation. Whether this is to be in reality useful or harmful is different. Yes, of course, in reality, we need something which is really useful, and we also decide to do it. If something is useful and we don't know it, and therefore we don't do it, we are not going to benefit from. Or if something is harmful and we think it's useful and we do it, we are not going to benefit. We are going to harm ourselves. But anyway, I have to know. For example, there is a medicine. If I think this medicine is poison, I don't take it. Even if this medicine is good for my treatment. And if there is a poison and I think this is medicine, I will take it. So, what people take or leave is based on their judgment. But their judgment is an attempt to get what is beneficial or avoid what is harmful. Point 2. This is also very important. Sometimes people say, we do things not always because we find them to be useful. We know they are harmful. For example, there are people who smoke cigarettes. Maybe in the past there were people who used to smoke and didn't know it is harmful. Maybe they thought it's useful. But now, definitely there are people, even doctors, scientists, who very well know that cigarette is harmful, smoking is harmful, and still they smoke. Why do you say we only do those things that we find to be useful? We find to serve our aims. We find to serve our ideals. The answer is, human mind is very complex. The way it works is very complicated. Although something might be from one perspective useful or harmful, but our mind can look at it in a holistic way and find other factors that can override the initial judgment. For example, if I am very tired and I feel, for example, very low in my morale, in my, emotions and my spirituality, I feel very low, very lonely, or very tired. So I think a smoking cigarette is bad for my health, but the benefit that I am getting from this overrides the harm. So when I smoke, I don't smoke because I know that this is harmful, full stop. No. I smoke because I think this is harmful, but next to the harm, there are some benefit or benefits. And at that moment, either really or because of pressure of my desires and temptations, because I am used to it, because my, willpower is not strong, at that moment I am convinced, or I convince myself, that overall it's better to smoke. Unless I come to this point, I don't smoke. Or for example, sometimes something is harmful, like injection. But realistically, I know that although it can be